Hello, and welcome to another video presentation of ApexSQL Doc. In this video, we will create an overview of the process of documenting a SharePoint farm in ApexSQL Doc. ApexSQL Doc is an all-in-one tool that's used for documenting many facets of a technical ecosystem, including SQL Server databases and servers, SSIS packages, SSAS cubes, SSRS reports, Tableau sites, and SharePoint farms. In order to document SharePoint farms, ApexSQL Doc must be installed locally on the SharePoint server. To begin the documentation setup process, first create a new project from the Projects section in the Home ribbon menu and click on the Add SharePoint Farm button from the Actions section of the Home ribbon menu. The same can be achieved by selecting the SharePoint Farm tab in the Data Sources and Objects pane on the left side, and then select the Add button. Since only one SharePoint server farm can be installed on a single machine, ApexSQL Doc automatically connects to the SharePoint farm. No authentication methods or connection credentials are required. When the connection is established, all SharePoint farm objects and their corresponding options are loaded into their respective grid and are selected by default. SharePoint objects are presented as a main section of information about the SharePoint farm structure. Options are sections of information that can be included or excluded from the SharePoint objects that need to be documented. The available SharePoint objects with their corresponding options include the following. Application Management lists all available databases and their configurations, service applications, site collections, and web applications settings. Applications represent a list of information about available SharePoint application URLs, licenses, and information about monitored applications. Backup and Restore lists backup and restore information from the server farm, such as backup history and settings. Farm Overview options contain an overview of farm servers, web application status, and a list of content databases. General Applications settings include web application settings, info path form templates, general settings and proxy configurations, content deployment, and SharePoint Designer settings. Monitoring includes SharePoint Server health analysis details, rule definitions, timer job problems, diagnostic settings, and event throttling. Security includes a list of farm administrators, password changes, service accounts, and antivirus reports. Servers in Farm contains license mapping, processors info, disk lists with statuses and information. Services on Server includes a list of service statuses. System settings contain information about farm features, cross-firewall zones, and SMS and email report settings. Upgrade and Migration contains a list of installed products and their patch versions. User Licensing contains user licensing details and settings. To include all required information that needs to be documented, select the SharePoint object label on the left object grid and the corresponding options, which will appear in the right grid. By clicking the checkboxes, the objects and options are selected for documentation. By checking a SharePoint object, all of its options in the right grid are selected by default. Checking only one SharePoint object option will also check the corresponding object in the left object grid. After selecting the objects and options for documentation, the next step is to choose the output file format. This can be done in the File Format tab. Let's select the DocX output format for this example. Once the documentation preferences are selected, it's time to start the documentation process. This is done by clicking the Generate button in the Home ribbon bar. Once the documentation process is complete, a message will pop up with the choice of opening the generated documentation file immediately. Now let's open the documentation to see what it looks like. As you can see, the selected SharePoint farm objects and their respective options are included in documentation and referenced in the navigation panel for easier navigation in the documentation. This concludes the video of documenting SharePoint server farms. Thanks for watching. For more information, please visit ApexSQL.com.